Friends, hello. Surely you've heard the following way of asking a question at least once, and I think probably 10 times or even more. Ukraine should live like Israel. Ukraine will live like Israel. Ukraine will always be in a state of eternal war. That's why we should focus on the Israel model, based on input from friends and acquaintances. Or there are another 100 different ways to phrase this thesis. Moreover, you definitely heard it from Zelensky, you definitely heard it from Zaluzhny, you definitely heard it from Budanov. So today I want to prove to you that this is just absolute nonsense, and Ukraine will never be able to live like Israel, nor will it ever do so. Probably, fortunately, because living in such a mode is very difficult. And the video was originally supposed to be called 10 reasons or the 10 arguments why this won't happen. Today I'll give you up to 15 arguments. I really ask you to write comments after listening, what you agree with, what you disagree with, or add your own 16th to 20th argument in favor of what I'm saying. So let's go. The first argument: the geopolitical environment is completely different. Israel is surrounded by relatively small countries with very modest economic and military capabilities. Our aggressive neighbor is Russia. Well, whether we like it or not, it's a superpower with enormous nuclear potential, a fairly large economy, and considerable resources. That makes a constant Israel-style isolationist defense impossible, because that's a major vulnerability and quite a funny one. Argument 2, the absence of a powerful allied bloc with unconditional guarantees. Israel has been receiving guaranteed military and financial aid from the United States for decades. This includes air defense, aviation, intelligence, and annual subsidies. Ukraine is not an ally of the United States, while Israel is an ally of the United States. Ukraine is called a partner, and many people don't recognize this difference. The United States will always help its ally as required by specific documents. With Ukraine, as you can see, it's totally different. And this is exactly what I'm working on and constantly advocating for, saying that Ukraine should become an ally of the United States, not NATO or the European Union, we'll get to that in a moment, but specifically an ally of the United States. It's about both asking for and offering something. And we have things to offer, including natural resources, but also much more than that. Argument: the economic models are completely different. Israel has prioritized exporting high-tech medical and military technologies. This allowed them to reach a fantastic level. Last year, their gross domestic product per capita was $50,000. Consider this: $50,000 per person, while Ukraine's gross domestic product per capita is just $5,000. On average, an Israeli is 10 times wealthier than a Ukrainian. What is the Ukrainian economy? Let's be honest, it's still a raw materials economy. It's still dependent on agricultural exports. It's still dependent on transit. We don't have a developed technology sector to solve such problems. The fourth argument: demographic and migration trends are completely opposite. Israel has an aggressive repatriation policy, attracting Jews worldwide and granting them citizenship. What is happening in Ukraine? People are fleeing from Ukraine. They are willing to pay 10, 20, 30, and in some cases even $50 just to escape. Ukraine faces a major demographic crisis. School children are leaving and the country suffers both military and economic losses from the war. And even before this, we already had a fantastic, so to speak, population decline. A lot of people were leaving for at least Poland. This is very important in this situation. Number 5. The military structure and mobilization culture are completely different. In Israel, military service is part of national identity, and most citizens see it as a duty. That's how it developed over time and became a foundation for the state. What do we see in Ukraine? Mass resistance, mass evasion. Because that's not how it's done. Because Israel is a fully democratic state with freedom of speech, and that's how it was from the beginning. From the start, everyone understood why it was being done. Besides, let's not forget that Ukraine is a secular state while Israel is a religious state. That's why the model of universal long-term mobilization for many years is simply an unsustainable model. It's not feasible. No future in that. Argument 6. Israel and Ukraine differ greatly in size. Israel's compactness lets it concentrate forces and respond quickly to threats around its border. In contrast, Ukraine is much larger, making perimeter control much more difficult. This requires incomparably greater resources for constant defense. I checked the exact numbers to be precise. This is the length of the border with the enemy. For Israel, that's the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, and Syria. All together, 450 kilometers. Just think about it. Only 450 kilometers. Ukraine's border with Russia and Belarus is about 3,000 kilometers compared to 450 kilometers, nearly 10 times longer. So, as you can understand, with such numbers, Ukraine simply won't be able to physically control such a front line without enormous expenses and some kind of mobilization exhaustion. Seventh argument, one of the most important. Actually, all of them are important, but I especially want to emphasize this one, the different level of internal political control and consolidation. I've often discussed Arabic as an official language in Israel and the Arab party in the Knesset, Israel's parliament. And Israel, despite the conflicts, has very strong state institutions, a functioning democracy, freedom of speech, which I just mentioned, and elements of consensus on key security issues. Israel does not politicize language or religion, because it's clear this would cause civil war and a total societal split. Ukraine faces corruption, weak institutions, deep political division, and a split society, especially due to the current government. But the past also includes the globalists. Eighth, the characteristics of the enemy and the type of war. Israel fights wars against irregular formations of its neighbors, where there is limited military potential. In our case, we have Russia. They have complete superiority in artillery, in aviation, and most importantly, a missile advantage, which we observe almost every day. It's an unmatched situation. The ninth argument made me reflect more deeply. For me, it sounds like international legal status and integration goals. As you know, Israel is not seeking membership in the European Union, is not seeking membership in NATO, and is building its own model based on complete autonomy. In our case, the Mauvira army has started. And for us, the course toward NATO is enshrined in the Constitution. We have declared a course toward the European Union, but the model of perpetual martial law completely contradicts European norms and hinders integration. If you ask me what I support the model of full autonomy. Not just due to military concerns, but also because of other issues like geography and Europe's current leftist policies causing many problems. Argument number 10, I've already mentioned this to you today, but I took the wording from, you could say, official documents. Israel was built from scratch as a project to ensure the security of a specific people. Where is the army central to the national identity? In the case of Ukraine, yet we have a multinational country, which I always say and emphasize, with a Soviet legacy, where the idea of a military state is foreign. You will never see a positive reaction to this in society. These propagandists that we see on YouTube and TikTok, it's all for money and under protection. It's unrelated to reality. I considered stopping at these 10 arguments, but decided to add at least 5 more for a total of 15. And argument number 11 is the lack of survival infrastructure. The toilet at Okianovka metro station in Kiev, which I showed on the last stream, made me think about this. These are details. In Israel, since the 1950s, I looked into this, people built bomb shelters in every house and neighborhood. That means bomb shelters have been built there for 75 years already. In Ukraine, there are none. There are no bomb shelters. And if I'm not telling the truth, please write right now in the comments which city you live in. Which town? Yes, just write how things are with bomb shelters where you are. The truth, not what I'm saying. Let each of you take part in this. Creating such a network of bomb shelters from scratch in Ukraine costs tens of billions of dollars and years. With all the corruption you see, do you still believe in this? Argument 12. Varying defense compactness and logistics. Israel can seal itself off with air defense, including the multi-layered Iron Dome. In the case of Ukraine, Patriots, Norwegian advanced surface-to-air missile system, whatever you provide, covering everything is technically and financially impossible. Argument 13. Varying levels of domestically produced military technology. I don't believe in flamingos or Polyanitsia. There's some breakthrough in drones because life demanded it. But there's a huge element of corruption there, and that's already ineffective. Tell me please, people, have you ever heard of even just one corruption scandal in Israel? In Ukraine we hear about 10 daily. Let's face the truth, not pretty words. They won't feed or protect us. They won't save us. Let's face the truth. Ukraine is a completely corrupt state without technology. Argument number 14. Different management culture. In Israel, all decisions, political and military, are made very quickly, instantly, and professionally. In Ukraine, there's bureaucracy, chaos, and corruption. I'm responsible for this, I'm not responsible for that. Take the example of protecting the power infrastructure which needed to be secured. A protective structure had to be built. Mustafa Nayem had billions of hryvnias, but there are no protective structures. Look at the defensive structures that were meant for the Kharkiv and Sumy border. Where are they? The money was allocated, but there are no structures. Let's wrap up with argument 15. Varying degrees of external pressure. Israel exists in the controlled chaos of the Middle East, but still is not under the daily influence of superpowers. Unfortunately, let's be honest, Ukraine is a pawn. Ukraine is what some call a proxy in this war. This, in my view, also makes the model of Israeli sovereign militarism impossible. I think 15 arguments were enough. Once again, I kindly ask you to leave your comment, add your own argument, or challenge mine, but be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks to everyone who watched until the end. Bye.